Hello, everyone. The following is part of a series of videos summarizing the first year of the Israel-Hamas War. This video focuses on the fighting that has gone on in the Gaza Strip over the past year. Other videos in this series are focusing on October 7th and the hostage situation, the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, the situation in Israel and Hezbollah, as well as the regional facets of the war. You can find links to the other videos in the first comment below. I hope you find this informative. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. So what has been going on in the Gaza Strip for the last year? After the October 7th attack, on October 8th, the IDF began its retaliation against Hamas in the Gaza Strip alongside the other fighting organizations. The first thing that happened was the imposing of an absolute siege. The Gaza Strip already was under siege of both Israel and Egypt. However, when I refer to an absolute siege, I mean that the power lines were cut off to the Gaza Strip, what water lines that were going to the Gaza Strip were shut off as well as the complete blockade of any humanitarian aid coming into the Gaza Strip. If you want to hear more about this, look at the other video that talks about the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. I will talk about that there at length. In terms of the fighting, what also started on October 8th was an unprecedented aerial bombardment campaign of the Gaza Strip. This means a monumental amount of airstrikes. You can see a picture in the top left corner of the airstrikes that are being carried out starting in October 8th. Now, just to give some sense of what do I mean when I say an unprecedented aerial bombing campaign, within 1 week, the IDF carried out over 6,000 air raids in the Gaza Strip, dropping over 4,000 tons of bombs. That equates to roughly the amount that the United States dropped in Afghanistan throughout an entire year of fighting, and Afghanistan is much bigger than the Gaza Strip, was dropped on the Gaza Strip within 1 week of this outbreak. On October 13th, leading up to the IDF invasion plans, the Israeli Defense Forces issued evacuation orders to Palestinians through different UN agencies and other channels, calling upon all Palestinian civilians to evacuate from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. This is a crude map of the Gaza Strip. The northern parts of the Gaza Strip refers to an area north of this line here, which I'll talk about a little bit later. This refers to Gaza City and all of its surrounding neighborhoods, where there are roughly 1.2 million Palestinians. All of them were ordered to evacuate to humanitarian safe zones in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip in preparation of an IDF invasion. Then the invasion of the Gaza Strip began on October 26th and progressed largely in several stages. Between October 26th and December 22nd, the IDF invaded the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Some of the most intensive fighting was seen in the areas of Jabalia refugee camp, Sajaiya, Zaytun, other areas, Ramallah neighborhood, all in and around Gaza City. This intensive fighting continued over the next couple of months, eventually winding down with the idea of withdrawing from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip on December 22nd, 2023. Since then, the IDF has been carrying out more localized raids in the Gaza Strip, again, sending divisions into the areas of Zaytun, Jabalia refugee camp, Rimal, Al-Shifa hospital. Lots of other things are happening in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. On December 3rd, so shortly before the concluding of the invasion of the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF began a major invasion of Han Yunis. Han Yunis is the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. I'm highlighting them with my mouse over here. That invasion lasted for roughly 4 months. Very, very intensive fighting that occurred during that invasion. Lots of aerial bombardments as well, although a lot less than in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Fighting there continued against 4 Hamas battalions that had barricaded themselves within the city, largely ending at the end of March. On April 7th, the IDF announced that it has pulled its forces out of Han Yunis. Then on May 6th, the IDF carried out a gradual invasion that then sped up of Rafah. Rafah is the most southern part of the Gaza Strip. That invasion began on May 6th, but would become more intense as the months went on. The fighting there was some of the most intense that we have seen throughout the entire war. That fighting started to dwindle down towards the end of July. On August 21st, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant had stated that the Hamas divisions in Rafah had been dismantled and that largely most of the fighting in the Gaza Strip is itself dying down. One of the things that are important to note is that the IDF had invaded the northern parts of the Gaza Strip here, and however, did not actually progress southward. Instead, the invasions of Khan Yunis and of Rafah came from the east. Thus, the last area in the Gaza Strip, the area of Deir el-Balah over here, the largest Palestinian town that is yet to be invaded by the IDF, has seen a lot of airstrikes and some IDF operations. However, the IDF has not actually carried out a ground invasion in that area. As of now, a year into the war, the IDF has announced that Hamas's military wings, the Al-Qassam brigades, have largely been dismantled and have ceased to function as a movement's military wing. What the IDF is saying is that Hamas has actually broken up into lots of different units that are much more operating in the style of guerrilla tactics and localized fighting instead of operating as overarching army. Again, that is what the IDF is reporting 1 year into the war. In addition to the fighting, the IDF also carried out a lot of assassinations in the Gaza Strip of different Hamas leaders. Some of the biggest ones are Marwan Issa, that was carried out on March 10th, and Muhammad Def, that was carried out on July 13th. It is also important to note that while the IDF has been carrying out these operations and then pulling out of different areas, Hamas has reportedly been rebuilding itself. Every time the IDF pulls out of a certain area, the IDF pulled out of the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, Hamas immediately began to rebuild its infrastructure and its governing facilities there. Same thing has happened in Khan Yunis. Reportedly, the same thing is happening in the Rafah area. That is part of the push and pull that is happening in the Gaza Strip. Just a few days ago, the IDF has announced that it has launched a massive operation into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, into Jabalia refugee camp, because Hamas has again assumed governance in that area. So that is the ongoing situation in the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Alongside this, the IDF has established several different permanent positions within the Gaza Strip that's different than the fighting in the different Palestinian towns. These are positions that the IDF has set up outposts and permanent checkpoints. These include, among others, the Netzarim corridor. That is this corridor that is marked in red here that largely divides the northern parts of the Gaza Strip from the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. The IDF has carried out a lot of operations to essentially flatten neighborhoods in and around this area in order to create a buffer zone, and then has set up permanent checkpoints and outposts along this area, cutting off the northern parts of the Gaza Strip from the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Palestinians are not permitted to return north beyond this line. They can, however, continue to evacuate further down south, and there are some reports that the IDF is considering turning this into a more permanent position even after the war ends. It is also one of the main bones of contention when it comes to the ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas. In addition to that, this buffer zone that is marked here in red is another permanent position that the IDF has began to set up. Already in January, the IDF began operations that were described as flattening of entire neighborhoods and areas in and around the fence between the Gaza Strip and Israel in order to not allow any Hamas activity in the future possibly to be near the border with Israel. The IDF has also set up several positions there. The last important one is the Philadelphia axis. The Philadelphia axis is largely this border that I'm highlighting with my mouse between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. That is one of the borders that is extremely important to the IDF because it is said that Hamas has smuggled a lot of its weaponry through that border. The IDF has taken over that border throughout the month of May. Right now, the Rafah crossing is shut down, and it is unclear what is going to be the future of IDF presence there. Again, negotiating IDF presence in the Gaza Strip is one of the most important facets of the ongoing hostage negotiations. Some data with regards to the fighting in the Gaza Strip. According to the reports that were published on the 1 year anniversary, over 13,200 rockets, mortars, and missiles have been fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel over the last year. Of these, 3,000 to 4,000 were fired on October 7th itself. The IDF, in turn, has carried out over 40,300 airstrikes throughout the year in the Gaza Strip, in addition to the ongoing ground fighting that is going on. Just to get a sense, back in January, it was reported that the IDF had launched over 45,000 missiles and bombs that were dropped into the Gaza Strip, amounting to 65,000 tons of bombs and ammunition. That was back in January. We are now in October. This gives us a sense of the intensity of fighting that has gone on in and around the Gaza Strip. In terms of destruction that has happened in the Gaza Strip, there are lots of different reports. The most accurate ones I could find date back to May and June. A UN report from May 2nd stated that some 79,000 structures in the Gaza Strip have been completely destroyed and 370,000 have been badly damaged. Some estimates that this is roughly 56% of the buildings in the Gaza Strip. And I remind everyone that is before the IDF carried out the invasion into Rafah, that was just within the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and in Han Yunis. In addition, there were different estimates of UN agencies that, based upon the previous rounds, it will take up to the year 2040 just to clear the rubble from the different buildings in the Gaza Strip. And again, that report is from May. In addition to that, the IDF has uncovered a vast network of tunnels, attack tunnels, strategic tunnels, command center tunnels that Hamas has built underneath the different infrastructures and buildings in the Gaza Strip. According to some reports, the tunnels are estimated to range between 350 and 470 miles of this network underneath the Gaza Strip. The IDF reported that in the last year it has uncovered over 4,700 tunnel entrances. With regards to casualties in the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that as of yesterday, there are 41,870 Palestinians that have been killed in the Gaza Strip. 97,166 have been injured. There is often a lot of controversy that people find with quoting the numbers that come from the Palestinian Health Ministry, since it is a ministry that is officially run by the Hamas-led government. At this point, I will refer you to another video that I published about the different numbers emanating from the Gaza Strip and why these numbers are relatively reliable. However, it is also important to note that that figure, 41,870, does not distinguish between militants and civilians. That is the total number of bodies that the Palestinian Health Ministry has recovered within the Gaza Strip. When it comes to how many of these were militants, how many of these were civilians, the IDF has published a report that 1 year to the war, it estimates that there are roughly 14,000 militants that have been killed in the Gaza Strip during the war. That is 14,000 with a high degree of probability that they were militants. And the IDF also estimates that there are another 3,000 that there is a less degree of certainty that they were militants that were killed. So between 14,000 and 17,000 militants, that is the estimate of the IDF. Possibly that means between 14,000 and 17,000 militants out of 41,870 that were killed. The rest were civilians. In turn, the IDF is reporting that 347 IDF soldiers were killed in the Gaza Strip during the fighting. That does not include the soldiers that were killed in the October 7th attack, or more broadly in the war. For that, you can look at the video that I published on the October 7th attack and the hostage situation. I discussed that more in greater detail. In addition to that, 2,299 IDF soldiers are reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began. In addition to this, there are roughly 1.8 million Palestinians that have been internally displaced within the Gaza Strip out of a total of 2.1 million Palestinians. And most of them are concentrated in the Al-Mawasi region, that is this region in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Once again, this video only focused on the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip. I will put out another video that focuses specifically on the humanitarian situation, what has gone on in the Gaza Strip. Those are my highlights of what has been the fighting in the Gaza Strip for the last year. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at Tufts University. Thanks for watching.